Let me tell you a story of James, who rejected his own mother and followed another woman. Long ago, there was a beautiful young lady named Clara. She came from a family of 3. Her parents, Pastor Mr. and Mrs. Daniel, were known everywhere as godly, kind, and respected people all over the town. They made sure their daughter lacked nothing. They gave her good advice, prayed for her, and raised her in a godly way. She was the kind of girl people turned to look at twice. Her skin was smooth and shining like fresh palm oil, and her smile could melt even the hardest heart. Clara was not just beautiful on the outside, she was also smart, polite, and decent. Clara came from a respected Christian family. People came to them for prayers, for advice, and for help. They had only one daughter, Clara, and they loved her deeply. They gave her everything she needed: love, care, comfort, and above all, godly guidance. Clara grew up in a home where morning devotion was not a choice, it was a must. Her father would read the Bible every morning, and her mother would pray as if she was talking face to face with God. Clara joined the church choir at a young age, always wearing long, neat dresses and smiling gently at everyone. Her parents were proud of her, and people in church used to whisper, "Ah, Pastor Daniel is blessed. See how his daughter is so well behaved." When Clara gained admission into the university, her life began to change in ways no one expected. Her parents celebrated and prayed over her. They warned her, "Clara, remember the daughter of whom you are. Don't follow the crowd. Let your light shine." She promised. She even cried when her father prayed for her on the day she left home. But when she got to the university, things began to shift. At first, Clara remained the same. She still wore her long skirts and tied her hair neatly. But then she met some new girls in her hostel, girls who looked at her and laughed. "Why do you dress like an old woman?" they asked. One girl, Shade, said, "You won't last. You're too stiff. University is not for saints." They called her Mummyg.o behind her back. At first, Clara ignored them. But slowly, their words started sinking into her heart like drops of water into dry ground. Bit by bit, she began to change. The first thing to go was her dressing. She started wearing tighter clothes. Then came the short skirts. Then the heels. Then the makeup. Her voice became louder. Her laughter became wilder. She started following her new friends to parties, then to clubs. At night, she would dance under flashing lights and come back to the hostel smelling of perfume and sweat. But every time she went home for holidays, Clara would change back. She would wear long dresses and speak softly. Her parents never suspected a thing. Pastor Daniel would say, "Ah, my daughter is doing well," and Mrs. Daniel would smile with pride. They didn't know that their little girl was living 2 lives, an angel at home, and something very different in school. Then, in her 3rd year, something happened that changed everything. One morning, Clara woke up feeling sick. She had been vomiting for days, but she thought it was just food poisoning. When it didn't stop, her friends dragged her to the school clinic. After some tests, the doctor looked at her quietly and said, "Clara, you're pregnant." Her heart stopped. Pregnant? No, that couldn't be. Her hands began to shake, and her mouth turned dry. When she told her friends, they weren't surprised. In fact, they laughed. "Just remove it," one of them said. "It's not a big deal." Another said, "You want to keep it. For what? Do you want to ruin your life?" But Clara couldn't listen. She was scared, terrified. She didn't want to die in some dirty clinic. She didn't want to face God's anger. And most of all, she didn't want to disgrace her father. Her father, the pastor. Her mother, the church leader. What would people say? So when the holidays came, Clara returned home with heavy feet and a heavier heart. She tried to hide her stomach with baggy clothes, but a mother always knows. 3 days after arriving home, Mrs. Daniel called Clara into her bedroom. Her voice was soft but serious. "Clara, are you pregnant?" Clara's heart jumped. "No, Mommy, she said quickly. But her mother looked deep into her eyes and asked again, Clara, are you pregnant? Tears welled up in Clara's eyes. Her lips trembled. She couldn't lie anymore. She broke down and cried, Yes, Mommy. I'm so sorry. Mrs. Daniel let out a loud cry. She fell on her knees, holding her head. Clara, you have disgraced us. What will we tell your father? What will the church say? What will the whole town say? Clara dropped beside her mother and held her hands. Mommy, please forgive me. I don't know what to do. Both mother and daughter cried bitterly that night. The room was filled with pain, shame, and regret. But the biggest fear still hung in the air: what would happen when Pastor Daniel found out? 3 days passed. Pastor Daniel had not noticed anything. He was busy preparing for a revival meeting. But Mrs. Daniel knew they had to act fast. So she called an old friend, Mrs. Bimbo, who lived in Ondo State. She trusted her. Over the phone, she poured out her heart. Bimbo, my daughter is pregnant. I can't let my husband find out. Please, can she stay with you for some time? Mrs. Bimbo listened quietly and replied, Yes, let her come. I will take care of her like my own daughter. And that was how Clara's journey into hiding began. Her father didn't know. The church didn't know. Only her mother, Clara, and Mrs. Bimbo carried the secret. After Clara's mother arranged everything, Clara was sent to Ondo State, far away from home. She moved in with Mrs. Bimbo, a kind and quiet woman who lived alone with her grown-up daughter. No one in the neighborhood knew Clara. That was good, it kept the secret safe. Mrs. Bimbo treated Clara like her own child. She cooked for her, cared for her, and even prayed with her. But no matter how kind Mrs. Bimbo was, Clara could not stop feeling ashamed. Every day she sat by the window, holding her growing belly, thinking of the future that now looked dark. She didn't tell anyone who the father was. She didn't want to talk about the past. She just wanted everything to go away. 9 months passed. And then, one early morning, after hours of pain and crying, Clara gave birth to a baby boy. The nurse cleaned the baby and handed him to Clara. He was so small, so quiet, so perfect. His tiny fingers held her thumb, and his eyes, though barely open, seemed to search her face. But instead of smiling, Clara began to cry. Not tears of joy. Tears of confusion, of fear, of guilt. She whispered, What am I going to do with you? That night, as the baby slept, Clara lay awake staring at the ceiling. The sound of his soft breathing filled the room. Everyone expected her to be happy. But all she felt was pain. Pain that this child had no father. Pain that she had disappointed her parents. Pain that her life would never be the same. 2 months passed. She refused to name him. She barely carried him. She never smiled. Mrs. Bimbo tried her best to encourage her. My dear, this baby is a blessing. Don't push him away. But Clara didn't answer. One morning, while everyone was still asleep, Clara wrapped the baby in a soft white cloth. She kissed him lightly on the forehead. Then she walked outside. She walked past 2 streets. Until she reached the old corner where dustbins were packed behind a tall fence. She looked around, no one was there. She placed the baby carefully on top of a closed bin. He was asleep. She didn't cry. She just whispered, Forgive me. Then she turned and walked far away, hiding behind a wall. From that wall, she watched. Minutes later, a young woman walking to drop dustbin stopped suddenly. She had seen something strange. A baby. A whole baby. Alone in the dustbin. Her heart jumped. Her name was Sophia. A gentle woman with a good heart. She had been married for 7 years with no child. Doctors had tried, prayers had been said, but nothing changed. Every time she saw children playing, her heart would feel like it was breaking into pieces. That morning, she had not planned to go out. But something pushed her. And now here she was, staring at a tiny baby boy wrapped in white, lying quietly in a place meant for trash. Sophia looked around. No one in sight. She picked him up carefully. He didn't cry. He just looked at her and blinked. Far away, Clara stood behind the wall, trembling. She saw Sophia take the child, hold him close, and walk away quickly. That was the last time Clara saw her son. Sophia ran home and called her husband. Come quickly. You won't believe what I found. When he arrived, she showed him the baby. We can't leave him. God brought him to us, she said. Her husband, a calm and thoughtful man, nodded. We will keep him. We will raise him as our own. And they named him James. From that day, James became the light of their home. He laughed, he crawled, he grew. They gave him the best of everything: love, food, comfort, education. They sent him to the best primary school, then to a top secondary school. Everyone in the community knew him as the miracle child of Sophia and her husband. Years passed quickly. James became a fine young man. Smart, gentle, strong. He got a scholarship to study law and later traveled to Paris for his master's degree. He returned home as a professional barrister, full of knowledge and dreams. His parents were proud, so proud they couldn't stop talking about him to anyone who would listen. But while James was rising, Clara was sinking. She had gotten married to a man named Mr. Samuel. He was a good man, honest, hard-working, and kind. But their home was filled with silence. No children. Every hospital said the same thing: Madam, you are fine. Sir, you are fine. Still, no child. One day, a strange woman in a white cloth at a prayer house told Clara, "Go and look for your son. You have a son. Until you find him, no other child will come." Clara's heart stopped. Her past was calling her again. Her husband asked, "What son is she talking about?" "Clara, you didn't tell me you had a child before." Clara broke down crying. "Yes," she said. "I had a baby before. I abandoned him." Samuel couldn't believe it. "You hid this from me." They fought, shouted, cried. Then Clara ran to her mother and told her everything. "Mommy," she sobbed. "They said I can't have another child unless I find him." Mrs. Daniel cried too. "We made a terrible mistake, Clara. But maybe, just maybe, it's not too late." "Where will we find him?" Clara asked. "It's been so many years." Her mother looked into her eyes. "We must try." The very next day, they traveled to Ondo State. The streets had changed. She walked through old roads, looking at every corner. Then one afternoon, as they passed a quiet street, Clara stopped suddenly. "I know this place. That's the house. That's where the woman who took him lived." She stood in front of the gate, breathing fast. Suddenly, a black car drove out. It stopped. The window rolled down. A young man sat behind the wheel. He looked directly at Clara. "Good afternoon, Ma. How can I help you?" he asked politely. Clara's mouth opened, but no words came out. His face, his eyes, they looked like hers. Her lips trembled. Tears filled her eyes. She whispered, "You are my son." James raised his eyebrows, confused. "I'm sorry, Ma. What did you say?" You are my son," Clara said again. James frowned. "I don't understand. My parents are inside." But Clara stepped closer. "I'm your real mother. I gave birth to you, and I left you. Please, forgive me." James stared at her in silence, his mind spinning. Everything he knew was being shaken. After Clara stood in front of him, calling herself his mother, James was completely confused. He didn't say another word. He simply drove into the compound, parked the car, and walked into the house. He found Sophia sitting in the living room, folding some clothes. She smiled when she saw him. But James didn't smile back. He walked to her slowly and said, "Mom, who is my mother?" Sophia looked up, surprised. "What did you say?" "I asked, who is my mother?" Sophia answered, "I am your mother." Sophia's hands froze as he asked again. Her smile disappeared. She blinked, trying to understand. "Why would you ask me that, son?" James stepped closer. "Because I just saw two women outside. They stopped me. One of them said I am her son." "Her real son?" Sophia dropped the clothes. Her heart started beating fast. She whispered to herself, "Oh God, not now. Not like this." James stared at her. "Mom, I'm asking you a question. Who is my mother?" Sophia looked at the floor for a moment. Then she stood up slowly and held James' hand. "My son, sit down. Please." But James shook his head. "Sit down for what?" "To hear what kind of truth." Sophia sighed deeply. Then she sat on the sofa and patted the space beside her. "James, come. Sit. You deserve to know everything." James sat down beside her, his heart beating fast. Sophia looked into his eyes. "My son, 27 years ago, something happened. I wasn't planning to tell you. Not now. Maybe not ever. But maybe God wants you to know." James was quiet. Sophia continued. "That morning, I went outside to throw away our waste bin. I didn't plan to take that road, but something told me to pass that way. And there in the dustbin, I saw a baby." James' eyes widened. "You?" "Yes," Sophia whispered. "You were wrapped in white cloth. So small, so quiet, just lying there. I looked around, no one was near. So I picked you up and took you home. I told your father, and we agreed, since we didn't have any child, we would raise you as ours." Tears began to fall from her eyes. "We gave you everything, James. Love. Comfort. Education. A name. A future. Everything." James was silent for a long time. Then he began to cry. "You should have told me," he said. "You should have told me before now." Sophia held his hand. "I know. But we didn't want you to grow up feeling like you were thrown away. We didn't want you to feel pain. We just wanted the best for you." James looked at her. "And you gave me the best." He hugged her tightly, his tears soaking her shoulder. "No matter what happens, I will never leave you and Dad. You are my parents. I don't care what anyone says." Sophia held him like a mother holds her heart. But the story didn't end there. 1 week later, Clara returned, with her mother beside her. This time, they came directly to the house. Sophia opened the door and saw them standing there. Clara stepped forward. "We've come to take our son." Sophia's face turned cold. "Your son?" "Yes. We've come to carry him home." Sophia looked at Clara from head to toe. "I raised James. I fed him. Bathed him. Sat with him when he was sick. Stood by him during exams. Laughed with him. Cried with him. He is my son." Clara's mother said, "You don't understand. He is Clara's blood." Sophia shook her head. "You gave birth to him." "Yes. But you also left him in a dustbin." Clara began to cry. "Please, we made a mistake." Sophia's voice was calm. "I'm not stopping you from seeing him. But you can't just take him like you're collecting a package." The argument got so serious that Clara and her mother took the matter to court. James was hurt deeply. He never imagined that the woman he saw that day would come back again to fight for him. He sat with his adopted parents and said, "Don't worry, Mom. I will stand with you." When they got to court, the hall was full. People whispered and pointed fingers. The story had gone viral, about the boy in the dustbin, now a barrister, being claimed by two women. The judge asked for all the details. Clara cried in court. She confessed everything. How she got pregnant. How she hid it from her father. How she ran away. How she abandoned the baby because of shame and fear. Sophia told her story too. Calm. Honest. Full of love. James was also allowed to speak. He stood before the court and said boldly, "Your Honor, I only know one mother. And that is the woman who picked me from the dustbin and gave me a life. I don't know the woman who left me." People gasped. Clara broke down. After weeks of back and forth, the court gave the final ruling. They said, by law, Mrs. Sophia and her husband are the true parents of James, as they legally raised him and gave him identity, education, and care. However, we acknowledge the biological connection between Clara and James. James will continue to live with his legal parents, but he is advised to show kindness to his biological mother. When the judgment was passed, Clara fell to the floor crying loudly. Her mother tried to lift her, but she was too broken. James watched them in silence. He walked over and helped Clara up. He didn't speak. He just looked into her eyes, full of sadness. And then he walked back to Sophia, who opened her arms and hugged him tight. That day, the court ended the case. But in the hearts of everyone there, a deep lesson was planted. A lesson about love. A lesson about pain. A lesson about the price of choices. And about what it truly means to be a parent. What do you learn from this great story? If you were in James' shoes, what would you do? Would you accept your biological mother back after all these years? And if you were Sophia, would you give up James after raising him with so much love and sacrifice? Drop your thoughts in the comments section.